Evicting a tenant can seem like a complicated process, but in this video, we'll quickly explain the eviction laws in Mississippi and outline some simple steps that landlords can take to initiate an eviction. In this video, we'll talk about what the eviction process looks like, Mississippi laws that determine how evictions are handled, and how to legally remove a non-compliant tenant from a property. Be sure to watch to the end of this video to find a link to a fillable eviction notice. First, what is an eviction? Eviction is the legal process required to remove a tenant. So-called self-help evictions, including changing locks on a property or physically removing a tenant from that property, are illegal, even for tenants who have violated the terms of a lease agreement. If the tenant refuses to leave, a landlord must seek an eviction from the court. One thing to note is that an eviction is different from the simple termination of a lease. A landlord can opt not to renew a lease after the specified term has ended. There is no need to involve a court in this process. In Mississippi, if a tenant fails to pay rent or breaches the terms of a lease in some other way, the landlord can issue what's known as a notice to quit. There are several versions of this form, and each applies to a different situation. The first is a 3-day notice to quit for non-payment. This one is used when a tenant fails to pay rent on the due date. In Mississippi, there is no grace period for unpaid rent. The 3-day notice to quit orders the tenant to either pay rent or face eviction in 3 days. The next form is the 14-day notice to quit, which is used when the tenant breaches the terms of a lease in some way that is not related to the payment of rent. This form gives the tenant 14 days to fix the issue or face eviction. However, if the problem is one for which the tenant has received a notice to quit in the past, then the tenant does not have the option to fix the problem and must move out within 14 days. If the tenant is found to have been conducting illegal activities on the premises, such as the distribution of illegal drugs, then the landlord is again under no obligation to provide an option to fix the problem and may deliver a notice to quit, ordering the tenant to vacate the property within 14 days. There's also a form called a 30-day notice to quit, which informs the tenant of a month-to-month lease that the landlord does not intend to renew the lease. If the tenant fails to respond appropriately to the notice to quit, the landlord can begin the process of eviction. In Mississippi, this is referred to as an unlawful entry and detainer suit. Bringing an eviction action entails filing some paperwork. For cases involving less than $2,500, the justice court nearest to the property will be the proper court. For cases involving more than $2,500, the county court will likely be the proper venue. The first document that must be filed is a cover sheet, which just asks for basic information about the eviction action. The second is known as a complaint. There are 2 versions of this, one for the failure to pay rent and the other for other lease violations. This form asks for further details about the breach committed by the tenant and must be signed by the landlord in the presence of a notary public. Once these forms have been filed with the justice court, the court will issue a summons. This is a document that assigns a hearing date. Copies of the complaint and summons should be served on the tenant in advance of the hearing. The tenant has the right to respond to the complaint using a document called an answer form. This form must also be signed in the presence of a notary public and filed with the court before the hearing. If the tenant doesn't appear in court, or if the judge rules in the landlord's favor, the court will issue a writ of possession. 5 days must pass before the landlord can obtain this writ, which authorizes the sheriff to remove the tenant and the tenant's possessions from the property. From eviction notices to court documents, we've got everything you need to get eviction proceedings going in Mississippi, and you can access them all at the link below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos on legal issues faced by property owners.